For the third time, I smelled men's cologne on my fiancée. It was the exact same scent her male assistant always wore. I knew in that moment, Candy had fallen for someone else. I didn't tolerate it. I immediately moved to call off the wedding. Through her tears, she swore she would cut ties with her assistant for good and that she would only love me from now on. Considering our families had been close for years, I gave her one more chance. 3 days later, Candy brazenly showed up at the autumn gala, pushing her male assistant in a wheelchair. While I confronted her, she screamed herself hoarse. "Sonny, you can use your power to own me, but you'll never have my heart. Leo loves me, and even if you break his other leg, even if you kill him, he will never leave me. For true love, we have no regrets." The entire room erupted. In their eyes, I had become the villain, a cruel and ruthless man trying to force her into a loveless marriage. Facing the strange looks from the crowd, I smiled. If that's how it was going to be, then I might as well play the part. After Candy's hysterical accusations, a strange silence fell over the entire ballroom. The crowd's gaze, which had initially been filled with confusion at the sudden outburst, had now completely shifted to contempt. I can't believe the Morganaire is that kind of person. Forcing her to marry him, and he broke that man's leg? That's just brutal. You can never judge a book by its cover. The Morgans have such a massive empire, yet their heir is a monster. No wonder Miss Hayes was so emotional. She's been through hell. The whispers swelled around me like a rising tide. I stood my ground, my face a mask of indifference, my eyes coldly scanning Candy and the man in the wheelchair before her, Leo. Candy seemed emboldened by her own bravery and the crowd's reaction, her tears flowing freely as she gripped the handles of Leo's wheelchair. She looked like a martyr, fighting for love, ready to die rather than submit. Leo chose that moment to look up, his face pale, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and a carefully constructed look of stoicism. He began to speak slowly, his voice trembling as if he were fighting back immense fear. "Mr. Morgan, it's all my fault. I'm the one who couldn't help falling in love with Candy. It has nothing to do with her. I'm begging you, please be merciful. Spare the Hayes family, and please spare Candy." He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what came next. He straightened his back and spoke, enunciating every word. "If you're still not satisfied, then take it all out on me. Beat me, kill me. I, Leo Vance, won't say a word of complaint. I only ask that you don't make things hard for her." This passionate declaration of self-sacrifice immediately stirred even greater sympathy from the crowd. Some people whispered their admiration for Leo's courage, while others lamented Candy's misfortune in being engaged to me. Every bit of blame was aimed squarely at me. The Morganaire, a ruthless bully who used his power to destroy true love. Candy played her part perfectly, bursting into sobs and leaning down to hug Leo. "Leo, stop. I don't want you to sacrifice yourself for me. If we have to die, we'll die together." It was a truly touching, tragic performance. If I weren't the fiancé who had actually been betrayed, I might have applauded their epic, world-shaking romance. I laughed. The sound was jarring in the tense atmosphere, causing everyone to fall silent and stare at me with a mix of shock and uncertainty. "Take it all out on you," I repeated his words, my tone level, but laced with a chilling cold. "Leo, who do you think you are? Do you really think you're important enough for me to waste my time on?" I took 2 steps forward, my gaze bypassing him completely to land on Candy's face. "Candy, 3 days ago, when you stood before me swearing you'd break things off with this man, you cried these very same tears while begging for my forgiveness. What makes these tears any more real? Is it because you have such a large audience?" Candy's face went pale, her eyes darting nervously for a second. But then she hugged Leo even tighter and shrieked, "Sonny, that's enough. I only said that because you forced me to. I was afraid you would actually hurt Leo. Now I see that running away solves nothing. You were never going to leave Leo alone. You just want to crush our love. True love." I raised an eyebrow. "So this is your idea of true love? Parading your lover around in a wheelchair at a gala so everyone can pity him? Is this how you protect the love of your life? It seems your love is pretty cheap." "You," Candy sputtered, speechless with rage. Leo quickly grabbed her hand to calm her down, then turned his gaze back to me. Mr. Morgan, I know you hate me. I'm the one who ruined your marriage to Candy, and I'm sorry. If you want revenge, I'll take whatever you dish out. You can insult me. You can hurt me however you want, but please don't slander the feelings Candy once had for you. I raise an eyebrow. You both keep insisting that I'm a cruel, ruthless man who tried to force you into marriage. I paused, my expression turning to ice. Since I've already been branded with that reputation, wouldn't I be letting you both down if I didn't do something to live up to it? It would be a shame to disappoint your spectacular performance and the expectations of the crowd. I took a step forward, closing in on the pair of star-crossed lovers. Leo instinctively tried to back away, but the wheelchair held him in place, leaving him to stare at me nervously. Candy immediately moved to stand in front of him, glaring at me with a look of false bravado. What do you think you're doing? You wouldn't dare hurt Leo in front of all these people. Relax, I said casually. I'm not going to lay a finger on him. At least, not right now. My gaze drifted down to the cast on Leo's leg, and I added meaningfully, a broken leg needs to be properly rested. After all, you might have a long road ahead of you. Or maybe you'll be going places where you won't need your legs at all. With that, I ignored the shocked and uncertain looks on their faces and paid no mind to the complex stares from the crowd. I turned and walked straight out of the ballroom. The moment I got into my car, Candy's father called. Sonny, that girl Candy, her mother and I spoiled her rotten. She's just too headstrong. You were humiliated today, and on her behalf, I want to apologize. He paused, clearly expecting a polite reply from me, but I remained silent. He had no choice but to continue, his tone shifting to one of resignation, tinged with an undercurrent of accusation. But Sonny, even if you were angry, you really shouldn't have, sent someone to break Leo's leg. That was just too much. If word gets out, it will be terrible for the Morgan family's reputation. Don't you agree? I cut off his carefully constructed speech with a cold laugh. Mr. Hayes, which one of your eyes saw me send people to break Leo's leg? There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then his voice rose with the self-righteous indignation of an elder. If it wasn't you, who else could it be? Sonny, it's obvious. The moment Leo and Candy started getting close, this happens. We're not idiots. I laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Fina, since you're so convinced it was me, Mr. Hayes, I'll take the credit. And I'm not just taking credit for this leg. I've already put a down payment on Leo's other one. You should tell him to get used to the feeling of a wheelchair. Mr. Hayes finally dropped his hypocritical facade, his voice turning shrill. Sonny, are you determined to blow this whole thing up until there's nothing left? After all the years our families have been friends, you're really going to burn it all down for an outsider? Yes, I answered without hesitation. Mr. Hayes, since the Hayes family has chosen its side, I'm happy to oblige. It's cleaner this way. 2 years ago, at a Morgan family gala, Mr. Hayes had taken the opportunity during a toast to carefully pull my father and me into a private room. After a few pleasantries, he brought up a verbal marriage agreement made years ago between my late grandfather and his own father. The agreement had been all but forgotten as the Hayes family's fortunes had declined. Mr. Hayes was earnest, his posture deferential, as he repeatedly stressed the old friendship between our families. Robert, he'd said to my father, I know it's presumptuous of me to bring this up now, but the one thing my father was most concerned about before he passed was Candy's future. It's our fault. The Hayes family just hasn't been able to keep up. He sighed, carefully watching my father's face. My father has always been a man of his word, and he held my grandfather's wishes in the highest regard. Don't say that, David. If this was a match made by our fathers, then it's our duty as their sons to see it through. Having met Candy before, I agreed. From that day forward, the Morgans began to support the Hayes family in every way possible. The Hayes Corporation, which had been struggling as a second-tier company, was suddenly fueled by massive orders, unrestricted financing, and key connections provided by my family. Their revenues skyrocketed as if they'd been strapped to a rocket. Within 2 short years, they went public and joined the ranks of the city's elite families. Mr. Hayes transformed from a minor entrepreneur who had to bow and scrape to a confident, high-flying chairman of a public company. And as for Candy, I believe I fulfilled all my duties as a fiancé. She loved jewelry, particularly the work of one specific designer. I went to great lengths to contact that designer, who was based in Europe, and spent 6 months commissioning a one-of-a-kind diamond necklace and earring set for her birthday. That day, she was the envy of all her friends. For 2 years, whether a corporate dinner or a private party, whenever she was with me, I made sure she was treated with the utmost respect and attention. Once, some clueless heir from another family made a flippant remark to her at a reception. I shut him down so coldly on the spot that he was utterly humiliated. After that, everyone in our circle knew that Candy Hayes was my intended, and no one dared to disrespect her again. I used my resources to build up her family's empire and used my patience and wealth to win her affection. I never imagined that in return, I would get this meticulously planned betrayal and a vicious public condemnation. When I got home, I called my father and briefly explained everything that had happened, including the absurd phone call from Mr. Hayes. My father was silent for a moment on the other end. The Morgan family is not a doormat for people to walk all over. Since the Hayes family decided to throw away our history and choose this path, you have my permission to do whatever you think is necessary. I'll cover you, no matter what. With my father's blessing, all my reservations vanished. I sent out a series of directives. Effective immediately, Morgan Industries and all its subsidiaries were to cease all business cooperation with the Hayes Corporation. All of our partners were to be notified that any continued association with the Hayes Corporation would be considered a hostile act against us. The orders went out late that night, and the vast, powerful machine of Morgan Industries began to turn efficiently and ruthlessly. The next morning, our company issued an official, carefully worded statement announcing the complete termination of our partnership with the Hayes Corporation. The moment the statement was released, it was like dropping a boulder into a pond. The financial news outlets went into a frenzy. The Hayes Corporation's stock price plummeted like a stone at the opening bell, falling so fast it triggered a trading halt within 30 minutes. I sat in my office, calmly watching the glaring red waterfall of the Hayes stock on my screen. Soon, my personal cell phone rang, Candy's name flashing on the display. I answered, and was immediately met with her unhinged screaming, a stark contrast to the tragic heroine she had played the night before. "Sonny, are you insane? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Retract that statement right now, or I'll make you regret it." I couldn't be bothered to reply. I just hung up and blocked her number. The threat? She clearly hadn't grasped the reality of the situation, or who held all the cards. However, the Hayes family counterattack came faster than I expected, and it was far dirtier. Around noon, the narrative online began to shift dramatically. A flood of dirt on me began appearing across all major social media platforms and forums. The posts were alarmingly uniform, clearly part of an organized and premeditated smear campaign. The attacks focused on a few key areas. First, that I was a tyrant who threw my weight around. An anonymous former employee claimed I was an autocrat at the office, constantly berating my staff, and had once driven a loyal, longtime employee to quit in a state of depression over a trivial matter. The post included a blurry photo of me looking angry as I walked into my office. Second, that my personal life was a mess and I was morally corrupt. A supposed insider claimed that despite my engagement to Candy, I was secretly supporting several mistresses. They even went so far as to list the names of a few college students, along with vague dates and locations, described with such vivid detail it was almost believable. Third, that I was completely unscrupulous. This narrative heavily emphasized how I, consumed by jealousy, had sent thugs to brutally break Leo's leg in a twisted attempt to force Candy into submission. They painted me as a classic psychopath with an "if I can't have you, no one can" mentality. This part of the story tied in perfectly with the drama at the Autumn Gala, and with a few witnesses from the event chiming in, it was incredibly inflammatory. More importantly, an army of bots and paid trolls flooded the comment sections, reposting and pushing the narrative with identical, pre-written text. Hashtags like #EvilCorporations, #JusticeForLeo, and hashtag #SupportTrueLove quickly started trending on Twitter. They had successfully twisted a business dispute into a personal vendetta, painting Morgan Industries as a tyrannical villain crushing a beautiful romance. Riding the wave of momentum, Candy and Leo went live on a popular streaming platform. On screen, Candy's eyes were red and swollen as she huddled next to Leo in his wheelchair. They both looked like persecuted victims, bravely standing against their oppressor. With tears streaming down their faces, they recounted my supposed atrocities, telling a moving story of how their pure love was being ruthlessly crushed by me and the Morgan family. Leo's performance was particularly masterful. He would occasionally wince in pain, looking at the camera with a pained sincerity. "I don't blame Mr. Morgan," he said. "I only blame myself for my humble background. I'm not worthy of Candy, and that's what brought this disaster upon us. But love itself is not a crime. We will fight to the very end. For this love, we have no regrets." The comment section was completely overrun by bots and clueless viewers. The screen was a waterfall of insults directed at me, and messages of sympathy and support for the star-crossed lovers. Comments like "Sonny Morgan should die," "Morgan Industries must fall," and "My heart goes out to Candy and Leo" scrolled endlessly. Any rare, rational voice that tried to question the narrative was instantly buried under an avalanche of hate. The meticulously planned media blitz was having its intended effect. After its morning crash, the Hayes Corporation's stock miraculously rallied. Fueled by a wave of sympathy investors and speculators betting on their David versus Goliath narrative, the stock defied the market, turning positive and surging upwards. Meanwhile, the stock of Morgan Industries began a plummet. The sudden PR crisis had the market worried about brand damage and potential regulatory risks. I stared at the two starkly contrasting trend lines on my monitor. One, for the Hayes family, soaring against all logic. The other, for the Morgan family, in a freefall. The cold light of the screen illuminated my face, but a cold smile played on my lips. Let them have their circus. Did they really think these pathetic media games could shake the foundations of the Morgan family? Did they believe that a little public sympathy and a few online insults could actually hurt me? How naive. They were treating the world of high finance like a stage for a cheap melodrama, forgetting the real rules of the game. Just as the Morgan Industries stock hit its trading limit for the day, a call came in from Leo. He dropped the act. There was no weakness in his voice now, only unconcealed triumph. "Sonny, see how the tables have turned? Out of respect for the 2 years you spent kissing Candy's ass, I'll give you two options. First, you pay a $5 billion breakup fee, and you and Candy go your separate ways amicably. Second, you can watch the Morgan empire crumble into bankruptcy, leaving you with nothing." I walked to the window, phone in hand, and looked down at the endless stream of traffic below. My voice was calm. "I choose option 3. I'm going to send you and the entire Hayes family to hell." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end, followed by a furious roar. "You're out of your goddamn mind." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I hung up and turned off my phone. For the next 2 days, our stock remained depressed, and the online firestorm continued to rage. The mood at the company and in the boardroom was grim, but I went about my business as usual, holding meetings and signing papers. On the morning of the third day, with our losses exceeding $10 billion, I picked up my encrypted phone and sent a short message. "You can begin." That evening, at 8 o'clock sharp, the official Morgan Industries live stream went live. The sudden flood of viewers caused the servers to lag for a moment. The live chat was a blizzard of insults. "How dare this scumbag go live? Sonny Morgan must die. We support Candy and Leo. Go bankrupt, you evil corporation." I sat before the camera, my expression serene, as if the venomous words were nothing more than meaningless background noise. "Good evening, everyone. I am Sonny Morgan." After that simple introduction, I wasted no time and got straight to the point. I am here tonight to address the recent false allegations made against myself and Morgan Industries. I signaled my assistant, and the first piece of evidence appeared on the screen behind me. It was a video, clear as day, from that private room at the Morgan Gala 2 years ago. It showed Mr. Hayes, voice soft and pleading, bringing up the old verbal marriage contract and begging my family to honor it to help his. His fawning, desperate tone was a world away from the confident public company chairman he was today. The stream of insults in the chat faltered, replaced by a flood of question marks. Then came the second piece of evidence, a detailed hospital report and several security camera stills. The report stated that Leo Vance's leg injury was the result of a drunken fall down the stairs at his own home. The incident occurred the night before the autumn gala. The security footage was a bit grainy, but you could clearly see Candy Hayes helping him into the emergency room, the timestamp perfectly visible. It's fake. It's all photoshopped. A few such comments appeared, but they were quickly overwhelmed by a rising tide of doubt. Then, I presented the third piece of evidence. It was another video. On the screen, Candy was weeping, clutching at my sleeve. It was the day she had sworn to me she would break things off with Leo for good. Sonny, I was wrong. I was just so confused. Please, just forgive me this once. I promise I'll never see him again. He's the one who seduced me. I swear, you're the one I love. Her choked sobs were a brutal contrast to the defiant martyr she had played at the gala. The live chat exploded. The tide of public opinion began to turn violently. What the hell? Is this a plot twist? Candy Hayes' acting skills are incredible. So he fell down the stairs himself? And her family begged for the marriage? Was it all an act? This is too much information. My brain is fried. Just as the viewers were reeling and demanding an explanation from the Hayes family, a new wave of bots flooded the chat, all spamming the same message. This evidence is clearly doctored. Who do you think you're fooling? With enough money, you can fake any evidence. Morgan Industries is powerful enough to alter hospital security footage. Don't be fooled, people. Support true love. I had anticipated this counteroffensive. I looked directly into the camera, my voice steady. I understand your skepticism. That is why, to ensure the authenticity and legality of all the evidence presented tonight, we have invited two public notaries from the city registrar's office to supervise and certify all materials. The camera panned to the side, revealing two officials in formal attire, their expressions stern. Stacks of certified documents sat on the table before them. The elder of the two spoke into the camera. Our office has verified that all audio recordings, medical reports, security images, and video files presented by Mr. Sonny Morgan tonight are authentic and legally sound. The entire certification process was conducted in accordance with all legal procedures. His words were like a bucket of ice water on a grease fire. The live stream chat went absolutely nuclear. The presence of official notaries, with their government-backed credibility, instantly demolished every claim that the evidence was fake. The flood of comments reversed course completely. The sympathy for Candy and Leo curdled into rage at having been deceived. Holy hell, he brought in notaries. This has to be real. Candy Hayes and Leo Vance need to get out here and apologize now. They played us all for fools. Biggest plot twist of the year. The Hayes family is finished. Watching the comments fly by, I knew the moment was right. It was time to deliver the killing blow. Now, regarding Mr. Leo Vance's so-called true love for Miss Candy Hayes, I began slowly, drawing everyone's attention back to me. I have some additional information you might find interesting. I brought up the final piece of evidence. It was a collection of notarized documents from overseas. They included a marriage certificate, a birth certificate, and copies of several debt collection notices from a bank. The documents clearly showed that Leo Vance had been married for 3 years, with a wife and son living abroad. The documents also showed he had racked up an astronomical amount of debt at overseas casinos. Leo Vance is a married man, being hounded by creditors for massive gambling debts. His reasons for returning to the country, getting close to his childhood friend Candy, and taking a job as her assistant. Well, I'll let you draw your own conclusions. My voice was ice. Candy, this is the true love you were willing to sacrifice everything for, the one you had no regrets over. A married man with a family who sees you as nothing more than a walking ATM. After a moment of stunned silence, the chat was completely consumed by a tsunami of comments. Shock, mockery, and white-hot rage at being manipulated. pity for Candy's spectacular lack of judgment. It all blended together. In that moment, the war for public opinion was over. I had won. I remained calm before the camera, but deep in my eyes was a cold, final resolve. I then announced, as the heir to the Morgan fortune, that we would be pursuing full legal action against Candy Hayes and Leo Vance for slander, defamation, and the more than $10 billion in market value their actions had cost our company. I also issued a stern warning that every single marketing firm and individual involved in this malicious online attack would be held accountable. The Morgan Industries legal team would cooperate with the authorities to hunt down every last one of them. The instant I finished speaking, the troll accounts that had been so active in the chat went silent, as if an invisible hand had flipped a switch. Swathes of them simply vanished, and the chat suddenly became much clearer. Across the entire internet, the narrative reversed completely in the face of irrefutable evidence and my declaration of war. The waves of sympathy and outrage that had been directed at me turned into a tidal wave of fury at being lied to, and it all came crashing down on Candy and Leo. Their social media accounts were instantly buried under an avalanche of mockery, insults, and accusations. Hashtags like hashtag Candy the Fool and hashtag Leo the Leech shot to the top of the trending topics on Twitter. The next day, the market's judgment was even colder and more direct. The Hayes Corporation stock opened at its lower limit, with so many sell orders that trading was effectively frozen. There was no hope of a recovery. To add insult to injury, someone had thrown buckets of filth at the entrance of their corporate headquarters, and the stench was unbearable. Photos and videos of the scene went viral. The Hayes family became pariahs in the business world and the laughingstock of the public, their reputation in tatters. Teetering on the edge of financial ruin and a complete mental breakdown, Mr. Hayes could no longer stand by. He rushed to the Morgan Industries headquarters with Candy in tow, desperately begging for a meeting. My secretary informed me of their arrival while I was reviewing the initial draft of our lawsuit against them. Let them wait in the conference room. I said it without looking up from the documents, my voice flat. They waited for 7 long hours. They waited as the afternoon sun beat down, as it sank below the horizon, and as the city's neon lights began to paint the night sky. I went about my day, handling my usual business, chairing a short executive meeting, and listening to a report from the PR department on how public opinion was stabilizing. I even found time to hit the corporate gym for a quick workout. Throughout the day, my secretary quietly updated me on Mr. Hayes's growing anxiety and his repeated request to speak with me, all of which I ignored. At 10 o'clock that night, with the city glittering below, I finally nodded to my secretary. Send them in. The door opened, and Mr. Hayes practically stumbled into my office. The carefully curated image of the successful entrepreneur was gone, replaced by a face etched with terror and profound exhaustion. Candy followed behind him. Her head hung so low I couldn't see her face, her shoulders hunched as if to ward off a blow. She wouldn't meet my eyes. All of her former pride and arrogance had been replaced by fear and humiliation. Sonny, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Hayes's voice was hoarse and trembling. We weren't in our right minds. I'm begging you, please show some mercy. Give the Hayes family a chance to survive. I watched them in silence, saying nothing, and the pressure in the room seemed to drop. The invisible weight became too much for Mr. Hayes to bear. He panicked and yanked Candy forward. Candy, now, apologize to Sonny. This is all your fault. You brought this disaster upon us. You ungrateful girl. His voice was a frantic mix of anger and blame. Candy stumbled as he pulled her, and when she looked up, her face was streaked with tears. This time it wasn't an act. It was genuine panic and regret. Sonny, I'm sorry. I was so stupid. I believed all of Leo's lies. I was wrong. I'll never do it again. She was rambling, her shoulders trembling. Lies, I repeated, my voice devoid of any emotion. Candy, you're an adult. You can make your own decisions. Does simply saying you believe his lies erase the fact that your family betrayed our trust? Does it erase the fact that you publicly slandered me and tried to drag my entire family into the gutter with you? Mr. Hayes quickly jumped in. Mr. Morgan, it was a misunderstanding. All of it. Candy was tricked by that con man, Leo. He hid his marriage, his debts, he deliberately preyed on her. We're victims in this too. He was desperately trying to paint his family as innocent victims to shift the blame. Victims. A cold, mocking smile touched my lips. Mr. Hayes, at the autumn gala, when your daughter was screaming her accusations at me, where were you? When you were on the phone, righteously condemning me for breaking Leo's leg, did it ever occur to you to check the facts? When you chose to side with true love and turn against my family, you didn't seem to think you were a victim then. Now that the tables have turned and you're facing the consequences, suddenly it's all a misunderstanding. My questions left Mr. Hayes speechless, his face ashen, his forehead beaded with cold sweat. I must have been out of my mind. Mr. Morgan, please, for the sake of the friendship our families have shared for years, for the sake of the times your father and I shared drinks and laughter, please, give us a break. The Hayes family legacy can't be destroyed like this. Otherwise, how will I ever face my ancestors? His voice cracked with desperation, and he swayed on his feet, barely able to stand. My gaze was like a razor. Mr. Hayes, from the moment you decided to use the media to blackmail my family and destroy our reputation for your own gain, our so-called friendship became worthless. And to be perfectly clear, my father's position is unequivocal. He has given me full authority to handle this matter. At these final words, Candy's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief and despair. Sonny, can you really be this cruel? Don't our past feelings mean anything to you? After all, am I cruel? I cut her off, my voice cold as ice. Candy, you stood in front of a crowd of people, holding Leo's wheelchair, and painted me as a monster with the most vicious lies you could invent. Who is the cruel one here? When you were spreading those disgusting rumors online, trying to destroy my reputation, did you spare a single thought for our past feelings? To come to me now and talk about the past isn't just too late, it's pathetic. The color drained from Candy's face. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. Seeing that emotional appeals and shifting blame had failed, Mr. Hayes made one last, desperate gamble. Mr. Morgan, if you'll just show some mercy, call off the attacks, let our stock stabilize, the Hayes family will pay any price. Stock. We'll give you a controlling interest in the Hayes Corporation. Just give us a way to survive. I shook my head slowly, my voice flat with disinterest. What value does your stock have now? It's nothing but a rapidly depreciating number attached to a mountain of debt. Besides, Morgan Industries has no need for your company. The sanctions will not stop. This is the price you must pay for the choices you made. Those words shattered Mr. Hayes's last line of defense. His legs gave out from under him, and he collapsed to the floor, all the fight gone out of him. Candy just stood there, her eyes vacant, unable to process her complete and utter defeat. I looked at the broken father and daughter, and I felt nothing. Mercy to an enemy is cruelty to oneself. They had started this war, and it had to end with their absolute destruction. As for the two of you, I continued, the law will deliver a just verdict for the damage you've done to my reputation and the massive financial losses you've caused my company. Everyone involved in this conspiracy will face the legal consequences they deserve. With that, I gave them no further chance to speak and had security escort them out. Silence returned to my office. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and looked down at the glittering, indifferent city below. The collapse of the Hayes family was only the beginning. The lawsuits, the liquidation of assets, the market itself would devour them piece by piece. And as for Leo, what awaited him was far worse than just public ruin and a prison sentence. 3 days. It took only 3 days. The once proud Hayes Corporation, like a skyscraper with its foundations ripped out, came crashing down, leaving nothing but rubble. Their stock became worthless paper. They were insolvent. The banks came calling. Their former partners sued. Every corporate nightmare imaginable descended upon them at once. Mr. Hayes ran around like a chicken with its head cut off, making one last, desperate attempt. He drove to my family's estate, hoping to see my father, hoping to trade on their old friendship for a sliver of mercy. But the heavy iron gates he had once passed through so freely were now shut tight. The guard didn't even bother to announce his arrival, simply speaking through the intercom in a monotone voice. Mr. Morgan is not receiving visitors. Please leave. He tried my father's private line, but it was perpetually busy. He turned to the old friends he used to call his brothers, but their phones were either unreachable or when they did answer, they offered vague excuses, their voices distant, as if speaking to a stranger. The cold reality of the world was on full display. When the court's final bankruptcy notice was delivered, Mr. Hayes's last pillar of support crumbled. He went alone to the roof of the Hayes Corporation headquarters and jumped. He ended his life in the most brutal way possible. When the news reached the hospital, Candy, who was already fragile from the relentless series of blows, finally snapped. She somehow managed to slip away from her attendants and made her way back to the mansion that was about to be foreclosed on by the bank. There, she took Leo Vance hostage, who had been hiding in a panic room inside. By the time the police arrived, the house was sealed tight. A negotiator tried to make contact, but was met with Candy's shrill voice screaming from inside. She had only one demand. Get Sonny Morgan here. I want to see him, or we all die together. My father called, his voice heavy. Sonny, don't go. She's lost her mind. She's capable of anything. Let the police handle this. I was silent for a moment before I replied. Dad, some things need a proper ending. Don't worry, I'll be careful. The police had already cordoned off the entire property. The faint smell of natural gas hung in the air. The situation was a powder keg. I put on a bulletproof vest and, covered by a SWAT team, moved to a secure position outside the house. Candy, I'm here. The front door opened. The living room was in shambles. Candy's hair was a mess, her eyes wild and unfocused. Her face was a mask of tear tracks and grime, and she looked completely unhinged. She was clutching a large, gleaming kitchen knife. Leo was tied crudely to a heavy wooden chair. His mouth was covered with duct tape, his face was sheet white, and he was shaking uncontrollably. One of his pant legs was soaked through with blood, which pooled on the floor beneath him. He had clearly been injured before she tied him up. When he saw me, his eyes widened as if I were his savior, and he let out a muffled, desperate scream. Help me. Save me. This psycho is going to kill me. His pleas didn't inspire any pity in Candy. Instead, they were like a match to gasoline. She whipped her head around to face him, her eyes bloodshot, and let out a low, chilling laugh. Save you? Leo, my love, she cooed. Didn't we promise we'd be together forever? What are you so afraid of? Abject terror made Leo lose all restraint, and he tore away the last shred of pretense between them. Who would want to be with a crazy bitch like you? You slut. If it wasn't for your money, you think I would have ever looked at you? That single sentence ignited the last of Candy's sanity. She let out a piercing shriek and began hacking wildly at Leo's bound legs with a knife. Once, twice, 3 times. The sickening sound of the blade hitting flesh and bone filled the air. Leo's screams tore through the silence of the house before dissolving into agonized whimpers. Finally, his head slumped to the side. It was impossible to tell if he had passed out or died. The floor was slick with blood. Candy, her strength spent, dropped the knife with a clatter. She didn't even glance at the bloody mess in the chair. Instead, she collapsed to her knees. With a trembling, blood-soaked hand, she pulled a ring from her pocket. It was the diamond engagement ring I had given her. She held it up, her face tilted towards me, a twisted, almost sweet smile on her lips. She began to mumble, her words nonsensical. Sonny, look, the ring. I still have it. It's clean now. I cut away all the filth. Can we start over? Just like before? You were always so good to me. I know that now. You're the one who really loves me. Her mind was completely broken, her memory trapped in some twisted version of the past. In the chair, the intense pain seemed to rouse Leo. He let out a faint groan, using the last of his strength to curse her. Crazy, crazy bitch. You slut. You ruined my legs. I hope you rot in hell. Candy turned her head slowly to look at the dying man who was still cursing her. The last flicker of humanity in her eyes went out, replaced by a calm, all-consuming madness. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't smiling. She just slowly pulled a lighter from her pocket. My pupils contracted as I realized what she was about to do. I backed away on pure instinct. Sonny. Candy looked at me one last time, her eyes vacant, filled with a strange sense of release. Let's go to hell together. Click. The flint sparked. A tiny flame leaped up and met the thick gas in the air. A deafening explosion ripped through the air. A fireball erupted, completely engulfing the mansion and lighting up half the night sky. I looked back at a raging inferno. A wave of searing heat washed over me, carrying with it the sickeningly sweet smell of burning. Candy and Leo were gone, turned to ash. All the drama, the scheming, the love, and the hate, in that one instant, it was all reduced to silence. I stood there, the flickering firelight playing across my face, but inside, I felt only a cold, empty void. There was no satisfaction of revenge, no pity for the lives lost. It was like watching the final act of an absurd play. The curtain had fallen, and all that remained was emptiness. The sound of sirens grew closer as police and ambulances swarmed the chaotic scene. Someone draped a blanket over my shoulders and asked if I was hurt. I shook my head, my gaze traveling past the frantic activity and out into the deep darkness of the night. The Hayes family was finished, in the most spectacular way imaginable. Leo Vance had gotten exactly what he deserved. The whole sordid affair, which had started with a simple betrayal, had ended in blood and fire.